So I think it's trendy right now to hate on the newest Rick and Morty episode, and I'm here to defend its questionable honor and morals.
Intro?
Hi, my name is Matilda, this is Kira, and we're here to discuss the latest Rick and Morty episode. I did a video on each season of this series, and starting season 5, I am critiquing and analyzing each episode. If you hear a little murmur in the background, that's my fan. It's way too hot. I only put on this jacket because it's vaguely cowboy-like, I felt, and that's relevant to this episode. So this video will be spoiler full, so do not watch it if you don't want to have the latest episode spoiled. It will also be divided into 3 segments. First, it's going to be continuity. How does this episode contribute to continuity of this season? And by continuity, I mean either an overarching plot spanning the whole season, like in season 3 with Beth and Jerry's divorce, or how does this episode contribute to a consistent character development of each character in the season, or if it does. The second part is characters. What journey are they on in the episode? And the last part is going to be quality control, meaning discussion of themes and general quality of the episode. So let me start. First, continuity. I already mentioned in all videos about this season's episodes that I don't know whether there will be any continuity, and I am heading towards no. I thought at first that they're going to be a season 2 style continuity, in the sense that character development is going to be a thing, but I do not think that I can have a consistent hypothesis. Also, again repeating the theory from the previous episode, the absence of portal gun and general character inconsistencies make me believe that it's possible that either there is completely no continuity, or the Rick in this season might not even be our Rick. His designation, C-137, was not mentioned in the episode yet. So when it comes to continuity, the answer is I don't know. This episode stands alone, and I don't think any of the characters learned a big enough lesson for this episode to be useful when it comes to judging continuity of the season.
When it comes to continuity, there's also this matter of the president appearing. His last appearance was in the episode where Rick ended up presenting himself as a fly fishing Rick, and I think the fact that there was no allusion to fly fishing in any way makes it so that we cannot really judge for certain whether that's the same Rick. I'm not saying it's not. Or am I?
Now let's move on to the character development. So I'll start with Jerry, who was the least relevant. He's living his nourishing the masses or watering the masses fantasy. And I don't know whether it's a reference, but we've seen in, I think, season 4, the Gluty Up Toilet episode, that Jerry's fantasy of perfect life included delivering big bottles of water to people. I guess usefulness is the theme. And in this episode, he also delivers water. This time just dispenses it from a Brita filter pot, that's it. And we can see a consistent theme with his character in this season, because he seems to be distanced and divorced from what's happening in his family. He seems to be clueless. In seasons 1 to 3, I used to be a Jerry apologist. I cared about him, and I thought that while he was not a cool character, he was the best characterized and intriguing. He had a character journey. I no longer think that. I mean, season 4 kind of ruined it for me, but now in this season he's just on the peripheries, being the butt of the joke, and kind of worse than in season 1, because in season 1 he was the punchline of many jokes, but in this season we already know so much more about him, but he became irrelevant again. For example, in the previous episode, when they were playing a board game, he was not noticing the conversation at the table. He just doesn't care and doesn't know what's happening around him. Now I'll go to Beth. Beth is still being her strong mom, head of the family self. she's become more assertive and more secure in who she is as a person, and that comes through in this episode. She wasn't particularly relevant, and I don't think she came into any particularly interesting conclusions, so that's it. And when it comes to Summer, she had her realization about what her life as a woman might be like sexism wise. I'm going to touch on it later. I don't think it's a realization. It was a bit painted like that, but she already experienced all of that, but in my opinion worse in the Gazorp episode. As I said, I'll mention it later. And Rick essentially repeats his arc from the previous episode with realizing that his lifestyle of substance abuse and partying hard is bad for him. He straight up says that he's got a substance abuse problem and ends up craving relationships and love, or ends up ready to commit up to a point. This Rick is very caring, and it's out of character how caring he is towards his family this season. I stand by that. He's very subdued, just not particularly badass, and which is weird. I have not heard many discourse on why Rick is like that this season, and it's very clear to me, even despite the fact that season 4 ended. Oh, maybe it's a logical continuation from where we ended up in season 4 finale, where he realized that he's a terrible father. Maybe this is his character arc emerging, him becoming more of a family man and a better person in general because of that. And I hope that was clear. And when it comes to Morty, I don't think he goes on a character arc this episode. Maybe if he realizes something, is that honesty is the best policy, but not in a moral way, just because lying is a hassle and can have unforeseen consequences, and if you say the truth, you at least retain some sort of control over the circumstances and what's happening. So yeah, not particularly moral. So continuity out of the way, characters out of the way, let's get into quality control. Before we get to the quality control segment, so discussion of themes and the quality of that episode, I would like y'all to perceive and behold my Didle themed pony trash, which is, I felt very relevant and apt. I cannot really find an effective and quick summary of the episode, so I'm just going to do my best. It starts with Beth and Morty in a horse hospital. Morty does not admire Beth's work, but he discovers horse semen extraction machine just used to gather genetic material, and decides to volunteer at the horse hospital to benefit from some action with said horse masturbation machine. And Rick then procures a tub of presumably horse semen from the episode in order to use that horse semen to design a weapon against Chads, cannibalistic horse underground dwellers, which was a reference to the 80s film Chad, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, who you might think are a red herring, but they aren't really. The semen is human, so the Morty sperm turns into those space-looking sperms who then attacked humanity. President gets involved, a sperm expert gets involved, Las Vegas, Cirque du Soleil's erotic performers from the show Zoomanity get involved. Just everybody bands together to fight the sperm. There is this one guy who looks like a superhero called Blazin, but just dies with a fizzle, not with a bang, so that's a joke in on itself. And yeah, everybody's fighting, which culminates in the sperm being defeated with the help of a particularly friendly piece of sperm called Sticky, but that Sticky impregnates Summer's egg, which was extracted at some point, resulting in a giant incest baby. So, what I do, this summary, I don't think I could defend the quality of such a thing. and the response from the fandom was generally very unfavorable. I'm here to dissect why. I'll leave my personal judgment towards the end. First of all, I think that the crux of the matter, why the episode was so poorly received, even one of the show's creators said that this episode was disgusting and tasteless, is that it has to do with Morty's sexuality, masturbation, and puberty. It is gross, but to me, it was just funny. And I think it comes down to the fact that that I, as a female person, cannot relate. In general, shame is a theme of this episode. And now let me kind of digress. I, as a psychology student and as a person, find shame fascinating. I think it's possibly the only universally hated emotion. There are 6 basic emotions which were crystallized, I think, as a concept by Paul Ekman in 1970s. They are joy, fear, sadness, anger, disgust, and surprise. They are the most basic human emotions. Shame is a complex emotion, meaning that it's not a thing by itself, it's actually a combination of other things. Maybe partially fear of being judged, disgust at yourself, sadness that you did the shameful thing, and anger that you did the shameful thing. And people universally hated, and it's not the case for most other emotions. In the times that we live in now, we don't, for example, get a chance to experience fear too often, and people miss it and crave it to an extent, and that's why they try to simulate and to feel fear in controlled circumstances of, for example, roller coasters, or they go see horror films. If they have too much pent-up anger, they might watch a piece of media that angers them to let out their frustration in a healthy way, or go work out. There is a reason, there is a need for that. They go listen to angsty music to experience that emotion. And I think because people manage to successfully compartmentalize emotions into their neat little boxes, there's been attempts to do that same thing with shame. I think we can see that in the popularity of embarrassment comedy and just the second-hand embarrassment and its presence within media. I, for example, find it unbearable, but I know people find it funny, and I would speculate, that's not a fact, that's my idea, that's because it lets them experience that emotion in a safe manner without personal investment. And I think that the reason why this episode was so disgusting to the vast majority of fans, who are very much predominantly male, is that they felt, to an extent, called out. I, as I said, am a female person, so I cannot really relate to that point, but I know from my studies and from what my friends tell me that male puberty, with its hormone-riddled angst and this overwhelming lust and sometimes anger, is an excruciating experience. So I think the fact that people felt it, that men felt it so viscerally, is just because it was so well done. And I'm not going to defend the humor or say that this was a smart episode. I think it's stupid. Maybe it is the stupid episode of Rick and Morty, but the show has always been stupid. Sorry to burst your bubble. The jokes were always stupid. There were a ton of jokes about jerking off. Squanchy's whole thing is that exactly. Morty has been caught doing that by Jerry in the Pluto episode, and it's generally a repetitive theme in the series. In general, the Gazorp episode, for example, had themes similar to that, where Morty jerks off into a sex doll, which is, I guess, a step up above a horse semen extraction machine, but still, I feel somewhat similar. In general, this episode is stupid. Rick's favorite joke of all time is just farting or fart noises in random places. So while I think you can feel however you want about this episode, I find that it's fascinating that so many people reacted so negatively to it, and I think you cannot really justify the stupidity of the episode itself as something bad if you enjoyed it in the previous episodes. Like, you can say that it's too stupid, but the way that people try to pretend to be surprised by the stupidity I mean, it's really escalated in this episode, don't get me wrong, but not as bad as people say, I think. I would definitely also say that the themes are, and the jokes are pretty strong. There is a whole ass incest baby, but please let me remind you that in season 1, in episode Lawnmower Dog, Summer, as manifested in Mr. Goldenfold's mind, proposes a threesome to Rick and Morty. So incest jokes were on par for the show already, so you know. And speaking of Summer, I've heard some critical, I mean, I've only heard bad things about the episode. The only thing that are praised is the hand job solo joke. That's the only thing that I've heard praised. Oh, and the fact that Rick admits to substance abuse and the way that the joke plays out with that. People liked it. But the gals who watch it did not like the portrayal of the sexism within the episode. And that's where I bring up Gazorpazorp again. As I said, the whole sex doll thing is pretty reminiscent. Maybe there is even a slight parallel, though it's maybe gross of me to say, between I guess Sticky and Morty Jr. being results of Morty's irresponsible jerk-off practices. Is that valid? Okay, I'll just stand by that. Anyhow, in Gazorpazorp, sexism is brought up for the first time. I've already critiqued it quite severely in my review of that season, which I will link up here, because I really disliked it because it was so cheap, because there were no jokes tailor-made specifically for the show, no original observations. I think you can joke about men and about women and about differences between them in a way that is smart. The best way that I can think of, there was this sketch, I don't know who did it, about drunk girls, and it was a very good observation of the way that women, where they are drunk, are portrayed. It was original and it was smart and it was pretty cool. But here they were all regurgitated statements and observations which were already dated at the moment of that episode's release. So that episode was bad, a bad take on sexism. The second take on feminism, I guess, would be a reference to the Bechdel test, which is a test for female agency in the media proposed by this comic book author Alison Bechdel. It was commented on in the train episode of season 4, and there the tool is criticized because it's so unprecise and that doesn't really show anything. But then again, just asking for 2 women who have names, not talking about a guy, is like some ground level expectation for, you know, female agency. Though there are, you know, pieces of media that don't meet that expectation, or they aren't feminist at all, which are good and are not anti-women. Like, for example, Lord of the Rings, very much so. Anyhow, my point is, it was a pretty neutral observation, and yeah, it was fine. It was not very good. But in this episode, I've even read, when I was trying to find for a summary, I found a review by a guy called Zach Handlin. I've read most of it, and he said that those jokes rubbed him the wrong way, where he doesn't get to be rubbed the wrong way about them. And I'm not going to tell other women how they should feel about it, but to me, it was apt because I felt that they must have at least asked a lady about her experiences in this, because it was a pretty apt portrayal of these kind of situations that take place in real life. I felt it was very realistic. And if you're bothered by it, then I guess it's working. If you're a girl, then maybe you relate too hard, like boys do with the whole
shame
thing. But if you're a guy and you don't like it and it rubs you the wrong way, maybe be more aware and call out this kind of behavior. That would be very helpful. We would all be, well, would we be thankful? I don't know. I think that should be y'all's job to keep each other in check. But anyhow, I think it was good enough. I'm being spicy. I don't know whether I'll keep this bit. Another thing that I will mention is something that I liked because it was pretty personal to me, which is this Cirque du Soleil Zumanity erotic burlesque show. When I was in the United States, I really wanted to go see that performance. It's a burlesque. I don't think they even strip. It's just, well, different gymnasts in bikinis and thongs, I guess. I really wanted to see it, but I was there with my parents, and we're Polish, we're not French, so that was kind of out of the question for me to ask them. And also personally I wouldn't feel comfortable. And why I'm saying French, because I've read an interview with a Polish dancer who was a member of the Crazy Horse Paris Burlesque Cabaret, and she mentioned that French families just are so fine with, you know, sexuality and bodies that they go visit the show. And it's only relevant because this cabaret was called Crazy Horse. And also I really liked the portrayal of Chuds, the horses, because I was a horse girl for a decade, and legit part of the reason why I stopped is the whole culture and the cult of horses by the people who ride them, and in general those spiritual portrayals and how horses are so glorified as animals. Don't get me wrong, I love them, they're beautiful, but I felt that Chuds kind of were what it sounded like when I heard some horse girls talk about horses. And I'm not saying I'm not like other horse girls, I just probably stopped being one. Maybe we're all like that, I don't know. Anyhow, I didn't mind that either, and with that I'll wrap it up with giving my opinion of the episode. What is stupid? It was ridiculous, but to me it was hilarious. It had a ton of good jokes. I don't think the Blazon joke was particularly amusing, but I liked the trebuchet jokes.
No, you're getting dumber because that's a trebuchet.
Nobody knows the difference. They're reloading that textbook trebuchet. Time to fly.
I felt that the sexism jokes.
You can't beat me. You didn't bring a woman that can kickbox.
The humanity jokes, the horse jokes, most of them were pretty funny. And I laughed out loud. I haven't laughed out loud while watching an episode in a good long while. So I don't know whether this video will convince you to change your outlook, and ultimately I'm not trying to do it. I'm just trying to offer a different perspective, and I hope that you enjoyed your time here. If you did, please drop a like and subscribe if you'd like to see another installment of this series, a commentary of another episode, or maybe check out my other videos. For example, video about the books that I read last month. I don't know, maybe that's something that you would be interested in. Anyhow, see y'all later, and bye bye.
Morty, you nasty, lying little world-ending pervert. I'm sorry. What was it like? Fantastic.